little when I was a little girl. And then I think from the homestead, my father, before my other sister and two sisters and brother were born, they moved to the started farming. He left the depot and started farming. Then my sister Celia was born.
And Seal was how much younger?
Celia, I had her date down here, didn't I? She's 1907. She's about 2 years younger than I was. And then my brother Kenneth, I can't remember how old he was.
Do I got the right piece of paper there?
Yeah, but I can't see that. Anyway, he had to work pretty hard. My brother Kenneth did. We all did, as far as that goes. And then my sister Norma was about 9 years younger than I was. She was the youngest of the family. And, none of us were born in a hospital. We had, I guess now you would call it a midwife that came over and helped deliver the baby, and then I think my mother in turn helped them. I know the lady that helped bring us into the world had 11 children altogether, and they lived about 3 or 4 miles from us. I don't know how much you want me to tell about them.
Grandpa, you were about 10, and Grandma, you were maybe not quite 10 when World War I happened. Do you remember anything about how people felt about that, or how you received news of the World War back then and things like that?
Well, I can remember when my dad came home from town and told us that we had declared war. I think that was probably several days after it actually happened.
Mm-hmm.
And we just subscribed for the Sioux City Journal, or Sioux City Tribune. And I still remember seeing all those headlines, in the paper about different events in the war. And of course, you only got the paper once a week.
How often did the paper boy come around to collect?
I think they sent him a check.
There was no local papers at all for a long time. I think Pressure finally got their local paper.
Mm-hmm.
We got word from the war. I don't know by paper, but my mother's brother was in the service, so that was the only word that we got back. And then I think the letters were very few and far between.
Mm-hmm.
Back then.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Grandpa, after you graduated, why don't you tell me what did you do for work?
Worked on the farm with my dad.
Okay. So did any of your duties change from choring, or was it kind of the same old thing, or just more of it?
More of it.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have any mechanized equipment of any kind. It was all horses and horse machinery.
Mm-hmm.
So that came in right after I quit farming.
So you picked and husked your own corn and that kind of thing? How'd you cut the barley?
They had a grain binder. You go out and bind it, bound into bundles, and then you had to go out and shock the bundles.
Mm-hmm.
You got all of that too, didn't you?
Oh, I got plenty of that. Right. We used to have, my older sister used to love to run the hay stacker. She'd drive the horses and stack hay, but we'd have to run the sickles and cut the hay and the grain. And then you took a hay rake and with horses attached, of course,
Mm-hmm.
and gathered it up in windrows. Then they'd go and pile it up the other way. But on the grain, I did the same thing. We helped shock the grain. My sister and I, younger sister, Seal and I, would shock a whole field of it. I think we probably got $5 if our dad didn't forget to pay us for shocking all that.
I forget to pay after our allowance too.
But every now and then, it was very exciting because you'd lift up a bundle to put it in a shock, and there'd be a nice little rattlesnake curled up under it. We were kind of long gone about that time to another bundle.
Mm-hmm.
It was hard work,
Mm-hmm.
but that's what we had to do, so.
And Grandpa, you went down and helped, was it a cousin down here in Arlington do corn, or?
No, wasn't really any relation at all. I come down. Actually, I come down here to go to school to begin with. First time I came down to a business school here in Omaha.
Would that have been like a predecessor to the university, or?
No, it was downtown. Can't remember the name of it now. I think it's still there, really. And I run out of money, so I went out and got a job of picking corn
Mm-hmm.
to get a little money ahead, but I never did go back to school. But the corn picking time was over, I went home.
Making money was always funner than school. Yeah. Well, we got you kind of growed up now, and sooner or later, you two got to bump into each other, so why don't you tell us about that? Where'd you see this gal at, Grandpa?
What was it?
Well, we had, he won't admit it, but he did know me before the last year or so. After I got out of high school, I went a year to get my first grade certificate for teaching. I went to Springfield, South Dakota. And in the meantime there, they built a big building called a cheese factory where we took all the milk. And instead of separating it at home, we took it by the cans over to that cheese factory and got so much a can of milk. And then that didn't last too long. They went broke, and so they started using the upper floor of the cheese factory for dances and recreation. That was about the only recreation we had. And I wasn't so far away, but he and I don't know where Eden and some of his buddies came clear up from Tripp County up there to the dances on Saturday night.
Well, he told me earlier that he came up there because the girls were so good looking.
Oh yeah. I don't know. There were a lot of girls there. So.
And so, like, who played? Did you have a fiddle, or someone have a fiddle and a collar and stuff like that, or what?
They had what do you call it, a group of 3 or 4 guys that go around and play for dances. I think they had a fiddle and a
An
guitar.
accordion.
An accordion and a piano if there was one available.
Mm-hmm.
But, they didn't make very good music, but everybody had a lot of fun.
Wasn't important.
We probably didn't know if we were doing the 1-step or the 2-step or or the waltz to what they were playing.
Uh-huh.
And they'd serve a lunch about 12 o'clock. Usually in a haymow, a barn. And usually had during bootleg days, and a lot of bad booze floating around.
Was there adult supervision there, or were you the as adult as it got?
This is just let nature take its course and have a few fist fights.
You getting any of those?
No, I stayed pretty clear of those. They like to get hurt.
Oh, it was fun though. When he said we served lunch at midnight, it was always a big fat bun with a bologna, slice of bologna or minced ham in it, and coffee out of a tin cup, which they probably use the same tin cups for their home brew, but it was nice. Even after we had after we got married, we went to all the barn dances and hay-mow dances, and some of them were house dances, and that's about all there was besides playing cards and for recreation.
So you met at this dance at the cheese factory, and so then did you start, like, what was an official date like? Did he have to call on you and arrange for another dance, or what?
You mean at the dance?
Yeah, like when did you start dating Grandma, or how'd that work?
I don't think so.
Not till I started teaching. I taught 1 year of school out in the Badlands, where I lived in the schoolhouse, and not till the next year I taught their home school, his home school. Had his little brother in school, and I think probably the first date we had, he probably came to pick his brother up at school, and then the big highlight of the school year was to have a big pie supper, pie social, or a box social, and I lived in the schoolhouse, what they called a teacher age, a room built on, and I remember that incident. I made a pumpkin pie, which probably was not fit to eat, but at the pie social, he kept bidding my pie up so he could eat pie with me. Paid $7.50 for a pie, which isn't too much right now, this age, but that was a lot then, and that was probably the beginning of our, if you want to call it, courtship.
You knew right there. $7.50 on your pie.
Right. That
You
was
knew.
a lot of money to pay for a pie. Then he kept sending little notes to school by Howard, his brother, and I'm sure that all the boys in school censored the notes before I got them. Because one of those boys at the last reunion he went to, about the 3rd, reminded me about all the notes that they read before I got them. Of course, you're all grown up now, and they can confess. I don't know how long we date before we ran away and got married.
Grandpa, tell me a little bit about that. You got to come to a pretty important day there when you decide this is the gal for me. What'd you do? How did you suggest this to her, or did she ask you?
She asked me.
Oh, sure. That's what they all say.
What do you remember about that?
Yeah, she really did.
I did. Oh. We had, I was teaching school there, of course. I think we had about $4 altogether the day we decided to go and get married. His mother knew it, and Florence knew it. His sister knew it. I guess their whole family knew it. And then we had a couple meet us in Myrtle, South Dakota, that were our sponsors that stood up with us. And we ran away. We eloped. A teacher wasn't supposed to get married in those days, you know, because that was the days of, well, you got married, first thing you had a baby, you know. Not like now. And so we eloped, and we didn't tell any of the school board for quite a while. I don't think we told him for the end of the year, and we were married in March.
Hmm.
Then I taught school out in the same school I started with. I taught school in that one 2 years, and then went back out in the Badlands the last year. Then I think Jack came along that put everything to kind of a screeching halt.
Hmm. So tell us about where'd you live after you got married? Well, before that, do you remember at all what you wore on your wedding day?
Yes, it was terrible. Well, I had such a pretty green dress, and it was long-waisted, and quite long for the way they wore them then. That was one era where they had them kind of long, and such a terrible color to be married in. We were married in the parsonage. I don't remember what he wore. I remember we had a little trouble when we started out. I'll let him tell you about that.
What happened, Grandpa?
Well, let's see, the day before we were going to go get married, I had snow tires on the Model A Ford. And being the last part of March, I decided to take them off, so I put the regular tires on. We got about 10 miles from home that morning. Well, first we had to go back and get the ring. I forgot that. I forget how far we had to go back.
We went not so far then,
Yeah, we got about 10 miles farther,
across the bridge.
and the hind wheel came off. I'd forgotten to tighten the lug bolts on the lug nuts. I can still see that wheel going by us, going alongside of us up the road. Jumped the ditch, went over in the field. I don't know, we probably spent an hour there getting that wheel back on.
And that was on the way to get married, right?
Mm-hmm. Trying to tell us something.
Yeah. Signs of things to come, right?
Right.
Anyhow, we finally got up there where we were supposed to go and went down to the courthouse and got the license. I wonder how that was on a Saturday. I wonder how come they,
Well,
I guess they were open Saturday.
Murder was the county seat. I think the courthouse was probably open till noon, or like that anyway.
Do you remember at all what you were wearing?
No.
I don't think they were bib overalls though.
He got a little spiffied up, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, tell us, Kathy and our first place, it wasn't very fancy, but we had quite a few things, and level of expectation of what a young couple ought to have in their first place is pretty high right now. Tell us about your first home and some of the things that you had in it.
Well, see, we lived with his folks for a little while because we didn't have that place fixed up, and we would look at it and think it was impossible, but we kind of wanted to have a place of our own, so we started in on it, and probably had to charge the lumber that we put on the outside. It just had tar paper. We put siding on it, and a little later we built a little room. It was all just one room, and we built a little room on one end of it just out of boards. It had a roof on it, but it had boards. No double walls, just paper on the inside. And for what most of the time it had tar paper on the outside. And we ordered from Sears catalog by payments, I imagine, as we still do, a range, and had that in the kitchen. And we had makeshift table, and we also ordered a round oak table, a buffet, and 6 chairs. I think they cost us, we still have the table, one of the chairs. I think your folks have the buffet up in the cabin, And that cost us $25 for that whole set. So we had that, and somewhere or another we did manage to have a bed, and we had orange crates for dressers, and we had a cream separator because we did have cows to milk. No washing machine. Our washing machine was a tub with water in it and a washboard, and then a boiler that you put on the stove to heat the water. And your clothes would get kind of dingy. You'd put them in the boiler and put a little extra soap in there and boil them to get them white. Then you'd rinse them again, and you didn't dry them in a dryer. You hung them on the line, winter or summer, and freeze your fingers in the winter. Summertime wasn't too bad because they'd get dry, but in the wintertime, they had to wear heavy underwear then. So you'd take them off stiff, like a corpse, bring them in, and stand them wherever they'd stand or hang them up to finish drying. And put up a line after we had the babies to dry the diapers on. It was a little rough because we had to haul all of our water. So you save the water from the wash to scrub the outdoor toilet and to scrub your floors. So we had, then Jack was a baby, and well, things didn't get any better.
In the wintertime they'd freeze, and in the summertime the grasshoppers would eat them.
That's no fooling,
Hanging out of the line.
or they're blow full of dust.
And again, the year that you were married was
1930.
1930, and so there's something about some dirty 30s or something
Yeah.
like that.
Right.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about the dirty 30s?
Well, we had a cornfield.
Yeah.
My dad had given me a cow, and it had a calf, and he had a cow, and finally I guess we got our herd built up to 10. But the corn, you had to stoop over to pick the corn. It had little nubbins on it. We could pick a whole field and only get a wagon full, so you know our livestock didn't have much to eat. And that was a year then, it was a drought. You pray for rain, we never got any rain. The dust started blowing, winds were high.
How long, when he had a dust storm, how long might that last?
A whole day and night, probably. It seemed like it was forever that it ever let up. The dirt got piled so high that, and we had thistles were the only things that grew, but a lot of people were cutting those green and giving them to their livestock, stacking them, because there was no grass. And the dirt would pile, the thistles would blow into the fence, the dirt would be piled over the fence so you couldn't keep your cattle in the fence. You could walk over the top. And we kept our cattle, but that was the year all the little pigs, they slaughtered them or bought them and slaughtered them for what they called tankage, and because you couldn't feed them. And we raised turkeys, and we had a lot of turkeys, and we borrowed government money to buy feed for the turkeys, but they were pretty skinny. So.
How anybody ever ate those turkeys?
Grandpa, you told me a story once about a pocket watch that you lost, and then you...
That was her dad.
Oh, that was your dad? Tell me that story, Grandma, real quick.
Well, when he retired from the railroad, they gave him a beautiful gold watch, casement watch.
Uh-huh. You remember the maker on it?
Hamilton.
I was going to say, he's either a Waterbury or Hamilton.
Oh,
Hamilton. Had purple on it and gold letters, and they were working in the field plowing, and he lost the watch. And I don't know how many years later it was, they were tilling the ground and found that watch. And it
It's
was
after a dust storm.
it was in good, yeah, it
The
blew
watch
it
was
out
sitting up on top of a pile of dirt, you know.
of a ridge. See, when you make your cornrows, it would blow them out. So
Right.
it blew the dirt. They plowed it under, but it blew the dirt off. The watch was still in good running condition because I imagine it didn't have any water on it. You know, it hadn't rained.
Because it hadn't rained, right.
So, well, I wonder. I got no way. Just, you can take a look. Oh dear. Just enjoy. He's got pictures. And if I had the new ones in albums like I should, oh, we'd be able to find them. Good picture twins. We should have our 4 kids in there. Then later we can do all their kids. All I thought he got outside. It's open. We come to get our little boy. You can't move him. He's taking a picture.
There it is. Okay, we're back, and so we've taken you through some stages here and got you growed up and married, and I know being one of your grandkids, I know probably one of the biggest changes in my life was bigger than marriage was having kids, and because it just seemed like everything it's hard to remember life without children now. Even for me, the veteran of all 7 years of having children.
Right.
So why don't you tell me about a young man by the name of Jackie that came along, and tell me about his birth and anything that you can remember about him besides the fact that he got lost a lot, Grandma.
Well, let's see. He was born in December 30th, and we knew the doctor probably couldn't get through as far as where we lived, so we went up to my parents' place, which was about only 10 miles instead of 30. And, well, he was a long time coming, about the whole day. Then he decided he didn't want to be born because he had such a big head.
Still does.
And so the doctor and my dad both had to help deliver him, and thought they were going to have to use instruments, but they finally made it. His head was a little crooked for a while, but I think it's straightened out by now. And we stayed up there possibly a week, and before we took him home. And oh, he wasn't a problem child. He was a real good baby. But he loved to climb. He climbed from his high chair to the table. Of course, everything was close together in that house. Like I told you, we only had about 4 pieces of furniture and a day bed in there, and then we had to put a baby bed in there. So, but he climbed from his high chair to the table, to the top of the buffet, and then he didn't know how to get back. So he'd cry and cry, till somebody, or yell and yell, till somebody got him down. And he loved, all the animals. I think he was kind of a daddy's boy. He liked to ride he wanted to take lunch, so what did he do once in a while?
Hmm?
What did he do once in a while? When he wanted to carry his lunch, like you did. Oh, he carried it. He'd want me to fix his lunch so he could go on the corn wagon or whatever his dad was doing, because he loved to carry lunch in a lunch pail.
Like to be like you, huh, Grandpa?
Yeah, he wanted to
Yeah,
be
I
like
forgot
his dad.
about that, or didn't remember that at all.
Was he much of a hand on the farm?
Not at that time, anyway.
He wasn't big enough to be much of a hand on the farm. Just kind of a handful. And, well, let's see. Wasn't too much happened in there. We took him along every place we went. We didn't have babysitters. Once in a while, I guess Evan's folks had stayed home or watch him, but we went to a dance or something, but that wasn't too often. They liked to go too, so we all went. And then if he got sleepy, we'd just put him on the bed or on the floor or someplace wherever we were, and he'd go to sleep till time to go home. I don't do the time that he ran away. Well, that was after Joanne was born. But do you want us to go on any more about him?
Well, he was born December 30th,
Right.
1932.
Right.
And so why don't you tell us when Joanne was born and tell us what you remember about that.
I remember a lot about both of them. Joanne was born on March the 16th in 1935. And all the time I was carrying her, Jack was planning on this baby sissy, as he called her, all the way through. So he wasn't a bit jealous of her. But the doctor, Edwin had to go about 5 miles to any place. There was no telephones, to call the doctor, who had to come clear from Presho, South Dakota, which is about 30 miles, to deliver her. And had quite a time with her. She was a long baby. And everything
Long
was
in length or long
in
delivery?
length. Long in length and long in delivery, both. And her feet were kind of turned up when she was born. The doctor wasn't too concerned about it. He just said, well, every day when you give her bath, just turn her ankles out the other way and massage them. And so that turned out all right. They enjoyed each other as far as, you know,
Remember who was with you when she was
brother
born?
and sister.
Hmm?
Your mother. My mother was there when Jack was born, and his mother was there when Joanne was born.
Mm-hmm.
So, but we had to start right in working, you know, washing diapers. We didn't have Pampers,
No
or
Pampers?
Loves, or Huggies. No things like that. You washed
No
the
What about the
diapers.
diaper service? They came around and got them, didn't they?
Oh yeah, sure. Had our diaper failed, you washed the diapers on the board, you boiled them in the boiler, you hung them on the line, summer or winter.
Now, Grandpa, I changed a lot of diapers. Did you change any diapers?
Very few.
But the diaper changer.
As few as possible, right?
Yeah, right.
When Joanne was a baby is when we started having the dust storms, and we had to put wet sheets or towels around her crib to keep, you know, catch part of the dust, because the window sills would be full of dust. Just be little piles of it on the floor. So we were afraid she'd get dust pneumonia like a lot of the cattle did. So we'd try to take every precaution of, you know, keeping the dust down. Clean the floors 2 or 3 times a day.
Okay.
But she wasn't a farmer. She would scream and yell. I would try to leave her when I would go outside to do chores. I could leave Jack when he was little, and he would look at books. He would amuse himself in his crib. But the minute I would go out the door, she would start screaming.
Was it because Jack was twisting her arm?
No.
Pulling her hair?
She was belligerent. She'd throw everything out of the crib but the mattress. Couldn't give her books. And if you put her in the little wagon and took her outside, if a calf would get anywhere near her, she was yelling and screaming. Wasn't too much for the animals on the farm.
Okay, now those first two were born up in South Dakota, and Kay and Denny were born down here in Omaha.
Kay was born in East Omaha.
Okay. Grandpa, why don't you tell me about what made you decide to move to Omaha?
Well, our crops dried out, and couldn't raise any feed for the few cows we had. And my sister and her husband come up there to visit us. And he had started a tin shop down there in Omaha.
Mm-hmm.
He told me I could come down and work for him if I would consider it. And that must have been in the first part of '37, in the spring, I think. Or in the summer, anyway. They moved down there in the fall of '37. And we had an old 4-wheel trailer. Was made similar to a lumber wagon, used for a trailer. We put all of our furniture and stuff in there that we had and hauled it down here. And moved in with a sister and her husband until we found a place, which one out east Omaha.
You remember the address down there?
Pardon?
You remember the address down there? We just had a picture of that on the rest of the videos. Do you remember the address on the home?
32 something Fowler.
3402.
3402 Fowler.
Do you know, is that house still standing down there?
Oh, they moved it out when they expanded the airport. That's That's the reason they bought us out, because they didn't make the airport bigger.
So what year did you move up here?
At 41.
So did you go from Rudy's shop to the Union Pacific?
Yeah. Well, there was about a year there that he didn't have any work. About during 38, I think it was. So I worked for another tin shop one summer, one season. I think I got 35 cents an hour.
And did you consider that pretty good?
Pardon?
Did you consider that 35 cents pretty good?
Well, we managed on it, I guess, but we didn't live very high. That was when Kay was born, when I was working there. What year was she born?
35. I mean, okay, 37.
37? 37? No, must have been later than 38, I think.
Okay, so I
Anyhow,
know.
Yeah, 38.
38.
So she was born in that house in East Omaha?
Yeah, Kay was. While I was living there, when I started to work for the railroad. Then the next year, 40, we started negotiating for making the airport bigger. But then we started and had to look for a different house.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have too much time. That's when they found this one out here, moved in out here.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Grandma, why don't you tell us about Kay? What do you remember about her birth? And
Well, let's see. There was a couple lived upstairs at Florence and Rudy's house, and he worked for Rudy also for a while, and she was a nurse, and she kind of helped me all the way through before Kay was born, and then she contacted a doctor at the university. There was probably student doctors, and one of them had graduated and moved in. By the time Kay was born, had moved over into Iowa, but he said he would still follow it through and to call him when I was ready to deliver, and he'd come to the house and deliver the baby, which he did. And Bernie came out. She was the nurse. She came out and helped all the way through. And so our children were all born at home.
mm-hmm. What do you remember about Kay as a young child?
Well, she got uprooted pretty fast out in East Omaha because we had to move. And they had every kind of a childhood disease there was coming along.
All the kids, or just Kay?
All of them.
Uh-huh.
Jack didn't ever have them quite as hard. They had smallpox when they were in South Dakota. He had one pox, and Joanne had 150. And so Kay had pretty bad case of, I don't know if it was intestinal trouble for a long time. We had visiting nurse come out to help because we had no money, for a doctor, to have doctors and go to doctors. We didn't even really have a doctor. And
She had polio.
then she got over that. And about a little later than that, then Joanne got rheumatic fever. And we didn't know, but she had real bad sinus trouble. And that caused the rheumatic fever. And they were putting on, the two doctors came to the university out there to watch her and to doctor her. And that was the first time I ever heard of sulfanilamide.
Mm-hmm.
And they put her on that, and they had to watch it really close because it was when it first came out. But it seemed to help her, but she didn't get over it until after, well, she couldn't start school until late, till after we moved out here. But they got along fine. Jack went to Pershing School.
Tell me about Denny and his birth. And
So did Kay and her polio.
Kate didn't have polio till she went to high school.
Oh,
How was that? What was the name of the polio? Do you remember?
Well, hers was lumbar.
Uh huh.
It was in her back.
Uh huh.
And quite a few of that age um, children had it at that time.
Mhm.
And she was in bed nearly all summer, flat on her back. And I was putting on hot packs every 2 hours, night and day. We had to put them on as hot as you could wring them out. And because the hospitals were full, even if you had the money to go to the hospital, they sent them home because the hospitals were full. And he said, well, you can take care of her at home. I tried. But then she had treatments and had therapy. She was able to start to high school in the fall. She had to get special permission at North High to ride the elevators because she couldn't go up and down the steps. When Denny was born, well, every time we moved, it seemed like we had a child for some reason. I don't know if moving had anything to do with it or not. But Denny was born out here in this house, in that bedroom. And of course, the others were a little older, and they kept talking about, us having a baby, a new baby, and we also had doctors from the university at that time too. He helped deliver the baby, and Eden's mother was down here then. My mother came down when Kay was born and stayed for a while. Because, back then, they kept you down in bed possibly a week. Now they get you up the next day or the same afternoon and send you home from the hospital. And who knows if that's good or bad. But she came down, and then the kids all went to school and said, we're going to have a baby brother or sister when we get home. So they did know a little bit about the birds and the bees. And so that's when Denny was born. And of course he had kind of a bad time too when he decided to crawl up out the window in the upstairs dorm and fell off the roof. And
You break something?
he didn't show any signs of any life. Where I was papering, and we jumped in the car, and I guess we sped as fast as we could. Emmanuel Hospital was on Ames at that time, and our doctor was Dr. Schreiner. And anyway, the police would have escorted us anyway, and I think maybe they did when they found out. But he didn't regain consciousness until the next morning, and that was late in the afternoon. So, of course, now they tell him that's what's ailing him is because he cracked his head. I don't think so, but he had a real close call.
Mm-hmm. Wasn't
As
he?
did your father.
Didn't he have? Wasn't he real jaundiced too as a baby?
When he was born, he was very jaundiced, and they said no more children because of your RH blood factor. And yeah, they had to put him on orange juice and things like that before you should put him on it.
Mm-hmm.
But he came out of it all right.
Mm-hmm.
And nowadays they would have given him a transfusion, change his blood probably.
Mm-hmm. Grandpa, how many years did you work for Union Pacific?
34 years.
Okay. Did you have a hand in getting Dad his job there? Did you pull a few strings?
Oh, didn't have to. I don't think they were hiring at that time.
They hire almost anybody, huh?
Yeah. When they were hiring, that was about the only time anybody could get in. I suppose that some people probably knew the right people to get people in, but
Mm-hmm.
I didn't.
Mm-hmm. And Grandma, we talked about your days as a school teacher. Did you have some jobs down here?
Well, I didn't, I always said you should not go to work and leave your children. So I did a lot of work. We had an acreage out in East Omaha. I had a whole acre of garden and fruit, and I'd get up early in the morning and take care of that. Did a lot of canning, because after grasshoppers and dust storms, anything that grew, you needed to can or save. And we did that, and I did a lot of sewing, made all the children's clothes out of older clothes, made them over. And even out, when we moved out here, I had a garden.
Shut it off.
So you did a lot of canning and gardening and things like that. And then I know that you cleaned house for Mrs. Kiewit, and tell me the other names again. Mrs. Colombo and
The Millers, Harold and Mary Miller, and Dr. and John Traeger.
Right.
I worked 4 days a week. I cleaned house for 35 years, except my own. That I could neglect, you know. No, I made all the kids' clothes, all the girls' clothes. I even made a suit for Jack. Probably the one he wore for graduation was made over from one from Mike Tillman. They were hard times. But I think the older children remember when we had meatloaf and baked potatoes one day, and lucky if we had hash the next. So, no, I worked till about 7 years ago when I broke my back.
Mm-hmm.
Ended that.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what Edwin has. He's got things to tell that he did after he retired.
You kept pretty busy there in retirement, Grandpa.
After I retired,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, for a while I did.
Fixing furnace and air conditioning and
That was about it.
mostly those
Grandma did
items.
all the work around here,
Uh-huh.
yard work. She never did get me trained to do that. Too
He
good.
didn't want to be trained. It was hard to be trained. Oh, we did a little traveling. We loved camping.
We
Yeah.
sure loved going camping with you.
I know, we took all...
How many years did you tent camp before you ever bought a trailer?
Oh, not too many, I
Well,
don't
probably about 6, at least.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
then,
we went to...
Then your first camper was the high-low, and
Right.
and then did you have one in between this one and the high-low?
We had one,
We were just talking about the trailers, and I knew the high-low was the first one,
Yeah.
and I still remember jumping up in one of those cot bunks that you had, and ending up on the other side of my mom one time. And I remember up in South Dakota sleeping with Grandpa. At least I slept. Grandpa said that he didn't, because it didn't feel like I was. And did you have a trailer? Do I remember one that you had in between the high-low and this one?
Yeah,
Is this
I
your?
Right.
wondered if I could,
Uh-huh.
it wasn't arranged very well inside. We didn't keep it for very long. Well, I think that in one of our favorite spots was in the Black Hills when we took you and Kelly and started off the night before. Then your parents and the girls came up the next day, and that was always a fun spot because we went back again when Mike and Marty and Mark were about 10 years old, and took them along with us up there. And then we went back again to the Black Hills when Trina and Eric were about 12 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess it was one of our favorite spots. But I think the most some of the most beautiful spots were when we tent camped down in the Smokies, down in Tennessee, and Colorado, up in Mesa Verde, and all those places.
Yellowstone.
Yellowstone.
How about you, Grandpa? What do you think was your most favorite spot that you saw in all your camping time?
Well, I think the Grand Canyon and Yellowstone, pretty hard to beat them.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Canada.
I drove by the Yellowstone area on the Montana side and been to the Grand Canyon, but of the slides that you showed, I always wanted to go to the Grand Tetons. That was always the prettiest thing on the slides that I remember. Yeah. Well, I just want to thank you. This has been a big day, and Grandpa and Grandma's big dining room table is full of pictures and articles and old newspapers and high school diplomas, and the kitchen table is full of more stuff, and so I want to thank you both for just spending some time with us, and who knows, we'll add on to this some more someday, and we just want to tell you, all of us want to tell you that we love you.
Well, we want to tell you thanks a lot for doing this, and we love all of you, and one of these days you're going to be on there, not just us.
Now, before we leave, Grandpa and Grandma, tell them who your favorite grandson is.
Now come on, now that we have all they're all favorites.
Turn it off. And
Blow mine too. He's got such a bad back. That's such a good picture, Mervyn. In Texas. Died too young. So did Norma.
we never did get their phone number to the Hoggers. That's a good idea, having about that snowboard. You probably wouldn't.
She said after they broke their backs, all the skeletons in the closet.
What about the lady?
Later than that too. You know.
I got that one.
We already got that.
Yeah, because there was a copy of it here.
Oh.
Did you get Howard's picture? Florence and this has got Howard and Florence and their children, but I think that's the best one we got. You don't have, we got one of Florence on her 80th anniversary. You're going to get it. There you are. I'm not going to look that way. I'm going to leave. I'm going to leave home. Oh, what a mess. What a mess. We want one of her by herself. It's in these folders. All the kids. They're not getting anything. syrup. You know that, don't you? Yeah, you should. Another picture of all the kids. That tree was about knee-high to a grasshopper. Get another page of all your pictures. Those are all around here today.
Today and doing a few more things, and I see that we got another person with us. The short person in the middle. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us who you are?
Yes.
Okay. What's your name?
Maggie.
Maggie what?
Nielsen.
Maggie Nielsen. And who is your father?
Jack. Grandpa's gonna have to get a cough drop. Take some cough syrup. Well,
Yeah.
And
not enough.
Meg's been up here helping me this weekend, and we come back here today to ask Grandpa and Grandma a few questions about the church. Florence Presbyterian Church is their church, and it's something that has been a very big part of their life now for a lot of years, and it's been a big part of the lives of their family too. So a big part of the lives of their children and their grandchildren. And so Grandpa, how long after you were here in Omaha did you get hooked up with the Florence Presbyterian Church?
Oh, we've probably been here about 4 or 5 years.
Here in this house
No.
or down in East Omaha
No,
yet? Uh-huh.
we came in 37 and joined the church in 42,
43.
43,
Mm-hmm.
6 years.
Mm-hmm. And so you joined the church in 43, or you moved here in 43?
No, we joined the church in 43.
Okay.
We attended church before we joined the church. We
Yeah.
attended several years.
That's
couple
where we
years
went to
in
church when we,
Uh-huh.
after we moved out here.
Uh-huh.
We must have lived here couple of years before we actually joined.
Uh-huh. And the church.
Shortly after, Denny fell out of the window. That kind of made us conscious of
No, we
thanking, good Lord, that He's been good to us, I guess.
Uh-huh.
There's one thing, and then the minister come and talk to us.
Who was the minister at that time? You remember?
Reverend Jackson.
Jackson. And Meg. And we were down, the church was down in Florence that time, but not where it's at now. What was down on Tucker Street?
It was down on 28th and Tucker, the old church, and then they had to quit having church in there because the termites. It wasn't safe. The floor, you know, the floors weren't solid. So then they had church on Sunday at the Masonic temple. That's where we went after we went down to the old church, and that's where we were having church until, when we joined.
Mm-hmm.
But Denny was quite a bit older than that. Well, he was big enough to cry, so you know, it was kind of all one room. You didn't have a crying room, you didn't have a Sunday school room, and when we met, I think our best friend all the time have been here, and she's gone now. She took us. She belonged to that church, and she took us up to that church for a mother-daughter banquet. Moved out here in April, and we went up there in May, the girls and I, and for a mother-daughter banquet. We gradually got acquainted with all the people, and we liked the church very much. Our children all went there. Your dad, and your aunts, and your uncle. And in 1943, we officially joined and got our membership there. So, Aaron was an acting elder. He's still ordained elder of the church, and also a deacon. And I am an ordained deacon also. And many of our activities that we've gone to, our Mariners groups, our Pilgrims group, Women's Association, Women in the Circle, all of those. We've done a lot of associating in the Florence Presbyterian Church.
Were you a Sunday school teacher in there
For
somewhere?
a while.
Uh-huh. What Sunday school class did you teach? Do you remember?
Intermediate.
So it'd be like 5th and 6th grade, or 4th and 5th grade,
Well,
or?
I think about 6th grade.
Uh-huh.
And
Did you have any of your kids in that, or was it
No,
after that?
They try to fix that so you don't. No, they were all in there. We have quite a few pictures of. Kay was in what they called Gertie's Girls, and they called them the giggling class. That age group were always giggling.
Mm-hmm.
And Joanne was in an older group, and the girls that she went to school with mostly. Mm-hmm. And Jack, I don't know what classification they put the older ones in. I remember that we did have Sunday school in several of the rooms in the old, as they called it then, the old Mormon house or Brigham Young house, even in the coal room, because our church, we outgrew our church in a very short time after we moved up there from the Masonic Temple. Well, let's see, the church cornerstone was laid or dedicated on in 1950. How old is the church? 35. It's 50 years old. We had our 30th anniversary up there. Our church itself is the Presbyterian church is 130 years old. So we celebrated the centennial at our church also. I don't know if there's anything else you know. Well, Jeff, this man that's doing this video, also went to church at the Florence Presbyterian Church and went to the confirmation class along with Kelly. Charlene didn't go quite long enough. They moved. She didn't go quite long enough to finish up her confirmation. And Joanne's went there. She was a very faithful person, because when her dad was working nights, we had to get up and either walk to church or get there by some other means. And she would walk as far as State Street, and then a man that sang in the choir always picked her up. He watched for her every Sunday. And Jack a lot of Sundays didn't go because he had a paper route and wouldn't be through and ready in time for Sunday school class, which was early. So
Let's talk about Kelly and I were confirmed there.
right.
Were Mike and Marty?
Mike and Marty didn't finish their confirmation there.
Uh-huh. How about, let's talk about who was married there. I know Christy was married there.
Christy and
Jim.
Jim.
And then Denny and Jody.
They were the first ones, and yes, Dennis and Dennis started up there when he was in the cradle roll. But they had a cradle roll then. That's when you had a little baby, you always put them on the cradle roll, and then they graduated, went on up to the different classes of Sunday school. He sang in the choir, as did both Kay and Joanne, had a youth choir. And a dear, lovely person led that choir, and now she is very ill. And then I think the next wedding we had there was Dennis and Jody, and the next one was Marty and Patty, and then following that, Leslie and can you think of his
Was
name?
it Roger?
No, Leslie and what's his name?
Dan.
Huh?
No.
Isn't that?
We're going to have to edit this part out.
Yeah, right. We have to.
Very good.
We were talking about the weddings, and we mentioned Christy and Jim's, and Denny and Jody's, and Marty and Patty's, and then Leslie and
Roy.
And Roy.
And most of them, we had the reception right in our fellowship hall there at church, except for Patty and Marty. They had their reception over here at the house. I think it was the hottest day of the year, 11th of July. But it all worked out all right. We had tables all over the backyard.
Mm-hmm.
I think the night, probably your mom and dad were married. Anyway, their wedding was confirmed, I think, by Reverend Jackson,
Mm-hmm.
the same minister that was there when we joined the church. And I think the next celebration we had there was our 50th wedding anniversary, which was held up there. And all the furnishings in the church, all the equipment and like that, we both worked real hard on either helping do it or raising the money to purchase different things like the pews and office equipment, movie equipment, things like that. So you always feel like you're part of the church then if you put yourself into it like that.
So, Grandpa and Grandma, you're now 50-year members of that church. Joined in 1943, and we're into 1994 already. And so, again, we're glad for the church and its part in your life and our lives. And we're going to take a look at a few pictures now of the church through the years.
See on the bottom? I don't know if it does or not on his. It says the same word on the bottom of his it says on yours.
That house there was called the Old Mormon House. It belonged to the Mitchells. It's the first house in Nebraska.
It's oldest.
Oldest house in Nebraska at once upon a time before they tore it down to build on the educational wing. Here's a night picture at Christmas of that educational part. There's memories for all of us there, and walking into God's house. There's a good-looking group. There's Grandma Allie. And what was that, Grandma? We won the what?
We had the most children, grandchildren at the mother-daughter banquet.
Really, I just picked this picture. It had Grandma Allie in it, but it also has Kathy with my favorite pair of glasses on her in there.
And then you have one card, then you go fish. You draw another card, see if it matches yours. Then you lay them on the table. Well, I don't know for sure. Okay. Yep. Put them on here and spread them all out. This is fish. I don't know, Lord, how to put that fish in this. There's two fish in here. Oh, this is the directions. It tells you how to play it. Oh, yeah, that'll show you how. Okay, then you have to draw a card. Okay. You draw a card, you put it in. And then I draw a card. Now you go fish. You see if you can get one. If you can't match that, then you have to lay it down so you can match it. Okay, lay those two down. No, yeah, face up. Okay, I'll draw one. No, I didn't match either. Okay, go fish. See if you can match one, then you did, didn't you? Okay, you can turn those over then. So you got one hook. Now it's my turn. No, I didn't match mine either, so I got three already. Okay, go fish. Just lay it down there.
That's yours.
That is mine, just don't match yours. Okay, my turn. No, I don't have the book yet. Okay, go fish. Did you match?
No.
Okay, just lay it down then. Okay, my goodness, I'm getting a whole bunch of them over here. I better match up something pretty soon. Yeah, come on, spread out. Okay, oh no. Got another one.
No whale.
No. Okay, go finish. Didn't match one yet.
This is.
Huh? Matches mine, probably. I know. Okay. So we never get any books here. Okay.
Crab, crab, crab.
I got one.
That's a book.
Okay, your turn. Whale. I know, but that's yours.
What do you do with
I don't know what we're going to do. It
It
tells on there, I guess. Oh, I got a
whale.
whale. Okay, I got two books. Okay, it's your turn. Go fish. Did you match? No.
No.
Uh-oh.
What happens if Santa put them
I don't know. I don't know what happens.
Can you read?
Oh.
I got that
I
one.
know. Okay. Did you match yours? Oh my gosh. We're going to get in trouble here pretty soon. We aren't getting any books. I got a snail. No.
No, I think I had the same.
Yeah, right. We'll have to throw them all back into it and match them.
We had 52. Quit! Five.
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 Oh, I got one. I got four.
I got 5.
That's all. Okay, well, turn these. Oh, you got got another draw. Does it match? Okay, we'll put these that we didn't, yeah, you beat me that time. Yeah, you beat me. Put them all out there. I don't know how it says to do this. I'm sure we're not probably doing it right.
Oh, just put it this way.
Yeah, we'll put it this way. I gotta mix these up. Okay, you draw. Okay, I draw. Okay. Now, draw and see if you can match it. Match right away. Grandpa should, you're gonna put them away, okay? She's gonna put them away. You can probably
But
put
we
them.
can say another one towards this one.
Uh-oh, I don't know if I know how to play that one. Have to grab the instructions and let him read it. Let's see, which one you got? ABC?
That must be
Oh, say, wait a minute, let's see if there's a directions in here. Like there was in the other one. Let's see. You can get part of the look. See if there's a, with this, printing. The other one had an instruction in it. I think you have to match them just the same. Left bar, F, Y on W. Just match up the letters.
It's of the letters.
Yeah, match the letters and the pictures, I guess. Okay, we'll try it. We'll try it our way. Put them all down. Okay. Got one on the floor.
There's a lot of them.
Boy, I guess so. All the alphabet. From A to Z. And got an ice cream cone. Ooh. Right. It's your turn.
Dog.
Oh dear. I can't match that. That's okay. Ice cream bar. You haven't figured it out yet?
Yeah, but like Jeff says, he didn't have time.
My mother
You,
and me.
You know,
Marvin
Grandma
and-
said, oh,
A lot of pictures.